Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa walah, amma ba'd, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. How's everybody doing? Alhamdulillah. So today, inshallah, we're continuing with the series on Usul Al-Fiqh, the principles of jurisprudence, or the principle of Islamic law, principles of Islamic law. And we're talking about the 10th evidence in Islam. So we've been going through what constitutes evidence in Islam. And so now we're going to be talking about Saddu al-Dhara'i'. Saddu al-Dhara'i', or you could say blocking the path, as in blocking the path to something that is harmful. Let's take a look. What is the definition? So al-Dhari'ah is a path similar to al-Wasila. Adh-Dhari'ah yani al-Wasila, it's a path. Dhara'i' is the plural. So blocking the paths would be a better translation. Saddu al-Dhara'i' means blocking the paths to evil and harm, just as the thing that leads to an obligation is an obligation. Like, for example, when making wudu is necessary for prayer. We all know this. You can't pray without wudu. And we know that prayer is an obligation. Therefore, ipso facto, just with a very, very rudimentary basic logic, you come to the conclusion that wudu is therefore an obligation. You have to make wudu in order to do your prayer, and prayer is an obligation, therefore wudu is necessary. So just as the thing that leads to an obligation is an obligation, so too in a similar fashion, that which results in the forbidden is forbidden. That which is going to result in the forbidden is itself forbidden. So what is the difference between Sadd al-Dhara'i' and al-Muqaddimah? Al-Muqaddimah is a different term, which is very close, but not the exact same. Al-Muqaddimah is a reference to something that, it is a cause that necessarily leads to an effect. Like, for example, if I hit this table, it's going to make a noise. Like, there's no real doubt about that. It's not like you could hit it 1,000 times, it's going to make that doom sound every time. It'd be pretty weird if I punched the table and just no sound came out, right? So this is like sort of a absolute necessary result. However, Adh-Dhari'ah is a reference to what is a means, a wasila, that allows or facilitates a result, but it doesn't necessarily guarantee it or necessitate that result. So it's about likelihood. Right? It's about likelihood. So we're going to take a look at that in more examples in a moment, inshallah ta'ala. So examples of Sadd al-Dhara'i' are what? Allah ta'ala says, وَلَا يَضْرِبْنَا بِأَرْجُلِهِنَّ لِيُعْلَمَ مَا يُخْفِينَ مِنْ زِينَتِهِنَّ. And let them not stamp their feet to make known what they conceal of their adornments. So stomping feet, this is in reference to women that are covered. Surah An-Nur is going about, talking about the whole surah. If you take a look at it, it's all about, avoiding zina. There's the punishments of zina at the beginning, and talking about not making accusations and lowering the gaze and all these different things that are dealing with zina and improper relationships. And now Allah Ta'ala is going into detail in this surah about wearing, like you could say, bangles, or basically things around the ankles that cause noises when you stomp loudly. And Allah Ta'ala is saying what? Don't do that to the sisters. Don't, you might be covered with a big, jalabiyah or jilbab or whatever. You might be covered up properly, but you're also kind of flirtatiously making noise to let people know that you are adorned in a beautiful way. And so this ayah is saying, don't do this sort of, you could say, enticing behavior. Stomping feet and getting attention doesn't necessarily lead to fornication, but it's opening the door. And a modern example, this is just my own personal thinking, my own little comment, is a modern example of something similar could be high heels. So high heels are a means, I'm sure you guys have all heard when, especially indoors, walking down the hallway, talk that's really loud, and it draws attention. Right, and also it makes you stand in a particular way, so that certain parts of the body are more protruding and standing out. So all of this is designed to what? Attract the opposite gender. And so the whole concept is what? If you're wearing hijab, if you're covered up, you're not supposed to be doing these sneaky sort of little techniques to try to be more flirtatious. And so the idea here is what? This is Sadd al-Dhara'i'. Allah Ta'ala is saying, look, it's not like guaranteed if you do this, making this loud noise with your bangles, stomping in such a way where you're advertising yourself in a somewhat sexual way. It's not like it's a guarantee that's going to lead to zina, but it could. And so therefore, because of that, you should try to avoid that type of behavior. Another example, Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَا تَسُبُّوا الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ فَيَسُبُّوا اللَّهَ عَدْوًا بِغَيْرِ عِلْمٍ. And do not insult those they invoke other than Allah. Don't insult their idols. If people are idolaters, mushrikun, they worship other than Allah, don't insult their idols, lest they insult Allah in enmity without any knowledge. So insulting a polytheist's gods doesn't necessarily result in them insulting Allah Ta'ala, but it could. But it's opening that door. So we must challenge shirk in a respectful way. We must challenge shirk respectfully without degenerating into name-calling or insulting or abusing. This is part of da'wah techniques. You don't insult your way into da'wah. Aha, you believe in this deity or that deity, haha, that doesn't make any sense. That's not polite. And sometimes, unfortunately, during the heat of the discussion, sometimes it does divulge into, somewhat loudness and harshness and so forth. But you try your best to avoid these type of things, and you try to make sure you're always speaking as respectfully as possible and saying, listen, I'm not going to disrespect you or your religion, but I'm just simply saying it doesn't make sense for XYZ reasons, while always maintaining respect. That way they would maintain respect for you. There are 4 different types of saddu dhara'i, or blocking the path, according to Ash-Shatibi. He divides it into 4 categories. Number 1 is almost guaranteed to result in harm. Like, for example, if you like digging a hole in front of somebody's door in the dark. Whoever does such a thing is liable for the damage. It is haram. Now you could say, I didn't hurt the guy. I just went in the middle of the night, right outside of his door, and dug a deep ditch. When it was dark out, I knew he was going to get up for Fajr and walk out of the house while it's still dark, and boom, he fell into my, trap. But I didn't actually hurt him. He should have been paying attention. No, you know that it was very extremely likely that he would hurt himself, and therefore you are liable. So when it's almost guaranteed to result in harm, then you are liable, and therefore it's haram. Almost certainly won't result in harm, like digging a ditch in a construction site. Obviously, they put up fences around construction sites for a reason. They put up these big fences and say, don't come, don't trespass, danger, et cetera, et cetera. If somebody jumps the fence and goes inside and hurts themselves, you're not liable. Number 3 is most likely will result in harm, like selling weapons. So it's not guaranteed, but it's likely. Selling weapons to the enemy combatants during war. The likelihood makes it forbidden. So there's a war going on, you want to make a little profit, so you say, hey, I'll sell weapons to the other side, the side that's fighting against the Muslims. I don't know what they're going to do with those weapons. Maybe that's just for at-home use, and maybe it's just for protection. You could say that, but since a war is going on, it's highly likely that it will, and therefore it is forbidden. And the number 4th type is often leads to haram, but not always. And so there's a bunch of examples of this. Like making a sale for something in the future. As you can see, I'm getting closer and closer to the gray area. So I'm trying, something you could say white versus black, black and white, black and white. And then what am I doing? We're getting closer and closer to the gray area and showing you how the ulama, when you get closer to the gray area, that's where you find difference of opinion. So like making a sale for something in the future. This is usually the road to riba. However, it can be legitimate. The Malikis and the Hanbalis, or the Hanabila, forbid it. However, Shafi'is and Hanafis permit it. So you're supposed to, the best type of sale is the type of sale where, let's say you have a apple, I have $1, I can inspect the apple and see that it doesn't have worms in it, it's good. You give it to me, I give you the $1, we both are satisfied, we both walk away. That's the best. But there are instances in which a sale for the future is necessary. And we talked about that earlier, about like, for example, in the case of a custom design thing, like I come to my house and custom design my room, I can't actually, I have to pay you up front, because obviously you're going to buy the materials, you're going to invest a lot of time, and I won't be able to see the end result near the end, until the end. And so there is a sale to the future in this. It's undesirable, but it's necessary. And so these type of things can open the door to riba and lead to the unsatisfaction, like, hey, I don't want to pay for this. You did a terrible job in my room. You were supposed to do this beautiful mural, and I don't like the artwork that you did. It's like, well, you have to pay me anyways. I spent months working on this thing. I bought all the materials. I've invested my time. And so you see where this can result in problems, right? And so this is the idea that Islam tries to minimize the amount of doubt there is in a sale. I want to know what I'm getting, and I want you to know what I'm giving, and that's it, on the spot. That's the best. So as you see, these are things that become more gray. The Sharia prevents a man and a woman being alone together, despite the fact that it often doesn't result in haram. It's not like every time a man and a woman are alone together, something happens. However, it can, and it often does, and therefore that's considered haram. The Sharia also prohibits women from traveling alone because she may be harmed, even though that's not the norm. We know this, obviously. It's not every single time a woman is traveling alone at night that something bad happens, but it often does, and so because of that, we protect our sisters from that. And the Sharia also prohibits women from wearing adornments and perfume in public, despite the fact that it doesn't always lead to fornication. So same idea. The scholarly opinion about saddu dhara'i, like I said, the Hanbalis and the Malikis legislate with it often, whereas the Hanafis and the Shafi'is, they do as well, but more rarely. Also because it becomes very difficult to always know exactly how something's going to result. You can have general perspectives, but it's hard to know for sure. And so this is, again, it boils down to a gray area. Is there more evidence for saddu dhara'i? Absolutely. We find that, for example, Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la taqulu ra'ina وَقُولُوا انظُرْنَا وَاسْمَعُوا وَلِلْكَافِرِينَ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. O you who have believed, don't say to Allah's Messenger ﷺ, Ra'ina. Ra'ina means pay attention to us, or cater to us, attend to us. Rather say, unzurna, look at us. So now technically you're like, what's the difference? And really, based on intention, it could be the exact same thing. Like, teach us, tell me, teach me. From that perspective, there's no difference. And listen, and for the disbelievers, a painful punishment. So you wonder, what's the difference here? Well, the verb ra'a yura'i mura'atan fahuwa mura'in means to attend to somebody. Therefore, the command ra'ina means attend to us, teach us. We want to learn about this new surah that was revealed to you. We want to know, we want to learn. However, it can be misunderstood. It's opening the door, the possibility to be understood. And there's two opinions as to how it can be misunderstood. Number one was, in Hebrew, the word ra'ina is a derogatory term, like saying, ya ahmaq, hey idiot. Right? It's a disrespectful term. And so there are narrations about how the Yahud would laugh about this. The Jews of Medina would say, I can't believe they're saying that to him. They're saying, Ra'ina, ha ha ha, how funny is that? And they would laugh about it. So Allah Ta'ala taught them to avoid this word that could be misunderstood and used as a means of mockery. And the second opinion is that Ra'ina, coming from the root verb of Ra'una, it could be understood as the ism fa'il. Basically, Ra'in could mean frivolous. So, ra'ina. It sounds like you're saying this is nonsense, right? And so what is the conclusion here? This is simply an ayah explaining that don't use a word that can be twisted when a clearer alternative is available. That's the main point. When you say, let's say I'm preparing a lecture, right? Let's say for Jumu'ah khutbah, or anybody else here, they're preparing some sort of a speech, or they're just having a conversation with somebody. You know you could say something in one particular way that might be understood the way you intended or misunderstood. It's wise to use the alternative that is clear as crystal. Why? Because you don't want to say something where if someone is in a bad mood, someone was having a bad day, someone has a bit of an attitude, they're going to take your words, they're going to say, I'm offended because of the way you said it and what you said, and they're going to take it in the worst possible meaning. If you can avoid all of that, we know that shaitan, Allah Ta'ala even commands us and says, always say that which is best. Why? So that shaitan doesn't sow enmity between you unnecessarily. This is what shaitan does. He wants to find a way to twist things. So if you can find a better way, do so. And this is obviously considered sadd al-dhara'i'. Another evidence of sadd al-dhara'i' is what Allah Ta'ala is saying, وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عن القرية التي كانت حاضرة البحر إذ يعدون في السبت. So, and ask them about the town that was by the sea when they transgressed in the matter of the Sabbath, when their fish came to them openly on the Sabbath day, and the day they had no Sabbath, they did not come to them. Thus did we give them trial because they were defiantly disobedient. So we know this, and if you go further, more ayat into the surah, I didn't cite the whole section, but basically there was a group of people that the fish would come when they were not supposed to work, and then when it was time that they could work again on the Sabbath, after the Sabbath, now they can work, there's no more fish. So what did they do? They played, you could say, a trick, almost trying to lawyer God, if you will, a'udhu billah, trying to play games with the deen, and okay, we'll leave our nets out, and then we will take it afterwards. So it's like they were working but not working at the same time. They were trying to, and you know what, it's similar to, I always like to give the analogy the way Muslims sometimes try to lawyer Islam. They say, okay, during Taraweeh, the Imam started, the Imam's praying, he's reciting a long surah, I'm going to stand in the back and I'm going to have a chat and a conversation with my buddy. And in the moment, what happens? The Imam goes into ruku', Allahu Akbar, goes into ruku', they run quickly, Allahu Akbar, and they catch the rak'ah, right? Now it's like you're lawyering God. It's like you're saying, technically I caught the rak'ah, yeah, but you were purposefully trying to waste time. This is something that's very insincere. Kids do it, and it's okay, I mean, they're kids, right? So when I see kids doing it, I don't make a big deal about it. But for an adult to do that, it's very inappropriate. You're disrespecting the salah. You should come and try to join as early as possible, not chatting in the back and then waiting for the ruku' and jump in and say, technically I caught it. So this is a similar example. Why? Because you're getting closer and closer to playing with fire, you could say. And in this regard, the Prophet says what? دَعْ مَا يَرِيبُكَ إِلَى مَا لَا يَرِيبُكَ. That leave that which makes you doubt for that which does not make you doubt. In other words, if you can, leave off doubtful matters. There's a lengthier hadith in this regard in which Nu'man ibn Bashir, by the way, I covered this hadith in length, if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, in the Arba'in al-Nawawi, in the series that we did a long time ago about the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi that are sort of foundational hadith, and this is one of them, which is that Nu'man ibn Bashir anhu, he says that I heard this directly from the Prophet ﷺ. He said what? Al-halalu bayyin, inna al-halala bayyin, وَإِنَّ الْحَرَامَ بَيِّنٌ وَبَيْنَهُمَا مُتَشَابِهَاتٌ, that the halal, what is lawful is clear, and what is haram what is haram or unlawful is clear, and in between them are doubtful matters which many people do not know. So therefore what? فَمَنِ اتَّقَى الشُّبُهَاتِ إِسْتَبْرَأَ لِدِينِهِ وَعِرْضِهِ. So he who guards against doubtful matters keeps his religion and honor blameless, and he who indulges in doubtful things indulges in fact in unlawful things, just as a shepherd who pastures his animals around a preserve will soon pasture in them. So obviously if you keep your animals, there's a certain area that's yours, and then let's say hills and certain grassy areas that don't belong to you. If you let your animals get closer and closer, eventually you're gonna you get closer to touching fire, eventually you get burned. And so this hadith is emphasizing, when it comes to doubtful matters, if your heart is uncertain, if you feel that this is doubtful, chances are you should probably just stay away from it to preserve your deen and not therefore fall into anything doubtful, and Allah knows best. And the final hadith in this regard is what the Prophet says: إِنَّ مِنْ أَكْبَرِ الْكَبَائِرِ أَنْ يَلْعَنَ الرَّجُلُ وَالِدَيْهِ. One of the worst sins that a man curses his parents. At the time of the Prophet ﷺ, nobody could imagine, because obviously they had so much honor for their parents and their lineage. They were very proud of where they came from and their ancestry and so forth. Why would anybody curse their parents? Doesn't make any sense. And so he was asked, O Messenger of Allah, how does a man curse his parents? Ya Rasulullah, كَيْفَ يَلْعَنُ الرَّجُلُ وَالِدَيْهِ. How could this possibly happen? It's very sad that we live in a time nowadays where people would curse their parents. Saying bad words. Hey mom, bad word, I'm not going to repeat it. But that thing's actually kind of common these days. But even in Jahiliyyah times, cursing the parents is unthinkable. So they're like, nobody would do that. How could it possibly happen? So the Prophet ﷺ explains, يَلْعَنُ أَبَا الرَّجُلِ فَيَلْعَنُ أَبَاهُ وَيَلْعَنُ أُمَّهُ فَيَلْعَنْ أُمَّهُ. So in other words, he curses the father of a man, so then he curses his father back. And then he curses the mother of that man, and that guy curses his mother back. So in other words, the Prophet ﷺ is saying, pay attention to the end result. Don't insult your own father or mother. How would I do that? I would never insult my own father or mother. Well, when you talk trash about somebody else's mom or dad, they're going to respond back and say, oh yeah, well your mom was of this. Oh yeah, well your father's of that. And so ultimately you should have seen 1 to 2 to 3 steps ahead and realized what you were doing. And so this is a means of what? Saddu al-dhara'i', preventing something ugly from happening. Whether it be cursing their idols and they curse Allah, you cursing parents and they curse back. Wallahu ta'ala a'lam bis-sawab. So with that, inshallah ta'ala, we close. And like I said, it seems to be the case just from a very broad and very simplistic perspective. But since this is just an introductory course anyhow, from a very simplistic perspective, it seems that when it comes to the obvious matters, that's very clear. But when it comes to as you get closer and closer to the gray matters, that's where more and more difference of opinion occurs. Like for example, should we have halaqat that are brothers and sisters both? Now the question is, well, yeah, if we have the brothers in the front and the sisters in the back, or side to side. Most people say, yeah, we probably could. What if people start getting friendlier? What if people start chatting more? What if people attend the lecture for some of the portion and then they go to the back and say, oh yeah, we just want to take a little break, and then during the course of the evening you're finding that a lot of people are hanging out outside, chatting it up. At what point do you say, you know what, these halaqat are becoming a source of fitna. These halaqat are just becoming a source for people to flirt and hang out. It's becoming less about deen and more about socialization. So should we put an end to it? Should we separate the brother's day and the sister's day? These type of conversations happen in masajid all the time. You hear board members discussing these things all the time. No, I think they should come together. No, I think they should be separated. No, I think they should this, that, and the other. So subhanAllah, the question of saddu al-dhara'i', at what point do we block the means to something haram happening? These things become gray as time goes forward, and Allah knows best. Jazakallah khair. With that we close. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.